Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside Sam Quinn from CBSSports.com. And that's a wrap on the Western Conference Finals. Oklahoma City takes care of the Wolves in 5 at home. This felt like this was over after the last game, Sam. Once Oklahoma City won that game, I felt like there was no chance of the Wolves winning this on the road in Oklahoma City, where Oklahoma City has 7 losses all season in both the regular season and the postseason at home. And sure enough, man, that was a demolition. We were texting each other like this thing was over in the first quarter. The Wolves had 9 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, this is the fastest this postseason I've kind of stopped paying attention to a game to go work on other stuff. This was over by the end of the first quarter. And not to one-up you, but I'm going to one-up you a little bit here. You thought this series was over after Game 4? Remember what I said on this show after Game 5 of Nuggets Thunder, when I said the Thunder had won the championship that night. And I'm feeling pretty good about that right now. This win tonight, it felt like Game 5 of the Nuggets series was sort of the young team figuring it out and have gotten across the flaws and the issues that a young team has in this high stress setting. Tonight felt like the Thunder beating the entire rest of the NBA. It felt like them sending a message like, this is our league now. We're going to roll to this title and who knows what beyond that. So this was an absolute decimation. I don't know what else we can really add to that.
Yeah, we'll get to the matchup, but this is Pacers erasure. I'm with you that I think Oklahoma City will win this, but I'm actually looking forward to the finals. But before we get to all that, I just want to discuss Oklahoma City and the season that they've had, because there were questions, right? There were questions about last year. They were the number 1 seed as well. They get bounced out in the second round. And there were a whole bunch of people who were like, I wonder if they can get through the Western Conference gauntlet. I was just on with Chris Walker, who was doubting them and thought that, if the Lakers ended up with them, or if Golden State ended up with them, that veteran know-how of how to win dirty and close games in the postseason might get to them. Well, you were right about that Nuggets series. I mean, the Nuggets put them on the ropes a couple times. They won Game 1 and then they were up 2-1 in the series. And then they took them to Game 7. And Oklahoma City answered each and every question that we have had about them. I just think full marks to that team, full marks to Sam Presti, who not just put together this team that you're calling a potential dynasty. And I don't think you're wrong about that, but to have a lot of general managers might've gotten spooked after last year, just to be like, nope, I'm going to give it another run. Let's see how it goes. I'm not going to use this giant bushel of draft picks that I could to go flip for a big time name. He just cooled his jets. And now all of a sudden, my God, yes, if you're the rest of the NBA, you have to be terrified of what they've built in Oklahoma City.
I mean, I'm looking at the build that Presti did here and just even the subtler things, right? I go back to last year's deadline when they don't make a major trade. The one trade they make is for Gordon Hayward. And I bring that up because the young guy they gave up in that deal was Trey Mann. And at the time, I don't think we saw much separation between Trey Mann and Aaron Wiggins and big Jalen Williams. And they just kind of tossed Trey Mann in that deal. And kind of look what happens as this playoffs goes on, where Aaron Wiggins and big Jalen Williams turn out to be essential in the Denver series.
Sure.
He got every little thing right. It's not just the big things. He gave up the right players. He drafted the right players. He extended the right players. Every little detail of this roster build went right. And, just to think about some of the things that other GMs would have done, what most GMs wouldn't do is trade Josh Giddey after his 3rd season. Most GMs would look at Josh Giddey and say, that is a high lottery pick that I made. That is somebody who puts up big stats. He's going to go wherever he's going to go, and there are going to be nights where he has triple doubles, and it makes me look bad, and I'm trading him for a guy that doesn't put up any stats. He just went ahead and did it, and sure enough, that's quietly one of the best trades in recent NBA history, I think. They would have been eliminated by Denver for sure without Caruso. Caruso, pretty emphatically to me, has claimed the best per-minute defender in the NBA belt, aside from Wemby, who's his own deal. I was sitting there thinking, watching the first half tonight, how high up the all-time versatility list would Caruso be defensively? Because the 3 guys that come to mind to me would be LeBron, Kawhi, and Draymond, at least from my time watching the league. Is Caruso defensively up there with them?
I mean, That's such a ridiculous thing to say, but also like not that ridiculous because like think about what he did in the last round where they threw him at Joker, giving up like 5-6 inches and 100 pounds. Like and he was effective, right? I mean, like that, yeah, this build that Sam Presti has put together has been so ridiculous. And it just like that I mentioned this on social media, I don't know, beginning of the season, middle of the season, something like that, that this was the real process, that this was always like Sam Hinkie's version of like the perfect ideal of what could happen if you had the right amount of draft picks, built through the organization slowly, didn't panic about like the latest thing to happen, and just like slow and steady wins the race, identify your homegrown superstar and take off from there. But it wasn't Sam Hinkie, it was Sam Presti who put it together, and like they just took off. And like I go back to like the PG trade, right? I mean, no, I don't think anybody knew. They didn't know in Oklahoma City in their wildest dreams that SGA would become this. They had hopes that he would be really good, but also getting Jalen Williams in that trade. Like there's so many things that you're right. There's so many things that they got right that just have worked out for Oklahoma City. And the Caruso thing, Isaiah Hartenstein just picking him up because the Knicks couldn't hold on to him, and then signing him into cap space that you have, like just a remarkable job of team building.
I hate to rain on the Hinkie parade because I am one of the many Sam Hinkie defenders out there.
Okay.
The difference between Sam Hinkie and Sam Presti is that Sam Presti drafted Michael Carter-Williams at 11, and in that range, Presti drafted Jalen Williams and Cason Wallace. Like the difference fundamentally, they had similar strategies.
These things happen.
Right, they had similar strategies, but Presti got the picks right? Like if Presti was picking in that 11 slot in 2013, he probably takes Giannis and has a Philly dynasty. But I don't want to pour salt on that wound. I'm very pro.
Conceptually, they are aligned. Strategically, yes, they are aligned. Yeah, execution wise, I mean, it's really hard to pick anybody that would come up with a resume and a job well done like Sam Presti. I mean, like he's at the very, very top of the business. And yes, Oklahoma City has done something. They're poised to do something here, Sam, and set themselves up for something that would be potentially historic going forward. Because next year, whether or not they win the finals, and I think that they will, and you think that they will, although unlike you, I'm not going to besmirch the good name of the Indiana Pacers. I think they will give them a fight, and I'm excited about that series. But whether or not they win, going into next year, they're going to be the favorites in the Western Conference again by a million miles.
They are positioned to be like we're going to have 7 champions in 7 years. They are the team best positioned of those 7 champions to repeat it, and if not do it back to back, to be in the mix for a long time.
Hold on. How did you feel about the Celtics before, face plan against the Knicks / Jason Tatum explosion?
Forgive my lack of modesty, but I was saying a year ago that this was going to happen with the Thunder. Now, the Celtics were the one team that I thought like really could have challenged the Thunder.
Yes,
and
me
like
too.
Maybe I think last year's Celtics were roughly as good as this year's Thunder, but I also felt like the Celtics had a few more flaws that you could pick at, right? Just because they were so 3-point heavy, they were so vulnerable to variance, and Porzingis' health was always a question, and Drew's age was a question. Like there were issues there that I personally didn't see with Oklahoma City. But they are as close to apron proof as any team in the NBA is, right? Like, obviously, like people don't realize they used a lottery pick last year in Nikola Topic. He just didn't play because he was hurt. He's joining the team next year. They're going to pick number 15 and I think number 24 this year. They have a million picks moving forward. Like, I think people are going to be surprised with some of the moves they make in the somewhat near future. Like next year, they're going to be able to keep this team together pretty easily. After that, like they might have to decline Hartenstein's team option or trade Lou Dort or do something like that, right? Because that's when Chet and Jalen Williams get expensive. But I don't think those moves are even going to really hurt them because they're just going to be able to slide in new draft picks. Like, I don't know who they're going to be able to keep long-term outside of the core 3. If I were to posit a guess, I would say they probably view Cason Wallace as the de facto number 4, but they've also done such a good job of like getting Aaron Wiggins to extend early and Isaiah Joe to extend early. And they'll probably do that with big Jalen Williams as well. He's got the team option going into free agency this offseason. I would imagine they decline that, sign him to a long-term deal as well. Like they are positioned to maintain depth and star power for the long haul in a way that no other team in this apron area is, except for like maybe San Antonio. But the other difference there is that San Antonio did this by getting lucky in the lottery 3 years in a row. the Thunder have actually gotten pretty unlucky in the lottery, if you really look at it, right? They lost the Sixers pick this year. They lost the Houston pick a few years ago. They fell to 6 in the Giddey draft. Like, Chet was really the only lottery luck they had. Beyond that, it was just Presti making the right decisions, not always in the easiest of circumstances. He just did his job so well that it hasn't mattered.
Yeah, Sam Presti, like, just give him executive of the year in perpetuity. Like, it's gonna engender a lot of like low key side eyeing hatred from his peers about like what he's built there, because man, just a fantastic idea. And all the things that you just rattled off are happening at a time when SGA took the extra step forward and became the MVP of the regular season and of the Western Conference playoffs. And we'll see what happens in the finals, but could pull off the triple dip there. And man, what a season for them so far. What a build that they've had. It's been really amazing to watch. Like, I was on Oklahoma City last year, and I kind of got laughed at on Beyond the Arc that they were too young, couldn't figure it out. And, they didn't get out of the second round, but this year, same deal. I was like, I don't know, that defense, all the numbers, all the metrics, everything, the depth, the fact that they play that many guys in the postseason when traditionally you're shrinking up your rotation. They're just like, no, we're just going to keep going with what we got because what we got is that good. Just really remarkable. All right, let's take a break. And then on the other side, got to get into the other team that played tonight. I'm doing air quotes. They played in this series. I want to discuss the Wolves and Julius Randle having a rough Western Conference Finals, and also critical offseason incoming for the Wolves. We'll discuss that coming up. This is Beyond the Arc. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. I want to thank everybody joining us live on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you click on the bell symbol, you'll get notified when we go live. Sam and I have been doing a bunch of live shows after these games. All right, the Wolves, Sam. This is let's do like a little squint and tell me, eye of the beholder, what you see here. On the one hand, the Wolves beat the Lakers in 5. They beat the Warriors in 5. Yeah, no Steph Curry, but still second straight Western Conference Finals. They do it as the 6th seed. Ant is still young. They've got some nice other pieces that are, developing, although they have some critical decisions in terms of critical pieces this offseason. But also they lose in the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year. And Ant and Julius Randle were largely no-shows in this series. So where do you fall on like what kind of season this was for the Wolves?
They were a 6 seed. I kind of think it's that simple. They were a 6 seed.
That Western Conference was all bunched up.
But my basic point is that I didn't look at them the way that I did last year, where they were at the top of the conference all year, and I had the expectation going into the playoffs that there is a real chance that they make the finals. What I think happened this year was that they got a really good matchup in the first round, and then in the second round, the best player on the other team got hurt, so they kind of won it automatically. I'm not looking at this team as one that I could realistically expect to make it back to the Western Conference Finals. They're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. If their ambition is genuinely competing for championships, not just cosmetically doing it, not just winning 52 games and going from there. If the goal is really compete with Oklahoma City, they're not there. We saw that in this series. They are a level behind. And if their goal is, if they're going to try to run it back, they probably can't do that because of the second apron. They're right now around, I think it's $58 million below the second apron, but that's no Nas, that's no Randall, and that's no Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So the reality here is, if they're going to duck the second apron, and for a variety of reasons, I think they not only need to, but will, because I don't trust that ownership to spend the money that it needs.
That too.
They're going to lose somebody significant. So their present is going to get worse when it already wasn't good enough. So you kind of have to go in one of two directions. No, John, I'll give you the floor. You seem like you have something you want to say.
Well, no, I was going to say, well, I wanted to stop you there because about like they gotta pick some doors here, right? So they have some big decisions that they have to make. Like, yes, you're absolutely right. The ownership group, like, how willing are they going to be to spend? Whether or not they want to duck the second apron, and if you don't duck the second apron, that comes with its own challenges because it makes there's restrictions on then team building moving forward. But I just wanted to mention, okay, so as we go through this, Tim Connolly, I think we're both aligned, is a very good general manager. He not only built this team, but he built the Nuggets team that won the NBA championship 2 years ago before jumping ship and going to Minnesota. So Julius Randle has a player option for $30.9 million. Nas has a player option for $15 million, almost certainly going to opt out there. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I don't know what his next contract looks like, but
Full mid-level. I
yeah.
promise you, full mid-level at a minimum. That is the best
I was going to
3-and-D
say,
player
yeah,
on the
minimum.
market. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
but
what I suspect is that'll be the older contenders with a mid-level, like Golden State or the Clippers, or if the Lakers can get LeBron to take a pay cut, like that's the floor. And then the ceiling is Brooklyn decides he's a core player.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you thought that, because I'm with you. When you said full mid-level, I thought you were saying that at first that was a ceiling. And I was like, wait a minute, but no, we're aligned. I think that like that's at a minimum. There's got to be, on the one hand, I think he played himself above that level. On the other hand, I didn't realize he is 27. I thought he was a little bit younger than that. So like, but okay, fine. In the NBA, it's not soccer. Maybe 27 is okay. There's some critical pieces there. And then we didn't even get to like a minor elephant in the room. And I love the guy. He's one of the nicest guys in the NBA. Mike Conley is cooked, man. Like that, he needs to get out of the starting lineup onto the bench and play like no minutes, basically, like just like mop up minutes. I love Mike Conley, but he gave them nothing. So that's a lot of core pieces. When I was on HQ with Chris Walker was talking about they need to blow it up. And I was like, Chris, they made the Western Conference Finals for the second year in a row. And then I rattled off all these decisions that they have to make. And he's like, yeah, man, you just said that they have to blow it up almost like by necessity.
Well, here's what I'm going to call it, John. I'm going to call it a controlled demolition.
Okay.
Something needs to change.
Fair.
So you can go in one of two directions here.
Yeah.
You can try to go up right now and make another aggressive win now trade. And the obvious one that's going to come up, there's been reporting on this, is would they try to get Kevin Durant, who was Anthony Edwards? Like Anthony Edwards idolized him as a kid. They played together on Team USA. Is that something you try? And my answer is, well, it depends on what it costs. Or should you maybe consider going the other way? And like, could you see about maybe trading Gobert somewhere and getting some picks back? Or has Randall, elevated his value enough through this playoff run to get some value back for him? And then maybe say, look, we're going to take a step back 1 or 2 years. We're not planning to do this long term. But our goal for the next
year. You're going to sell
years,
Ant on that?
Well, he has 4 years left on his contract, I think. So I think if you're telling him it's going to be 1 or 2 years, it's a little bit easier. But basically what you would be saying is we're going to get some assets back. We're going to pump up Dillingham. We're going to pump up Shannon. We're going to check those other young guys on the bench. Hopefully 1 or 2 of them pop. And then what we're going to do in a year or two, when we have some more picks to work with, when we have some young guys who are maybe popping, then we jump back into the star trade market then and go get you somebody who's more on your age timeline. I kind of think it has to be one of the two, because if you run it back with just a worse version of this team, that I hate to say this, especially because he has so much time left on his contract, that seems like a slow death march to losing Anthony Edwards in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, you know what? That's interesting, because when you put it that way, because all of it should be looked at through the prism of what can we do with Ant and how can we keep Ant happy? And so in the service of trying to win and also by association keeping Ant happy, would it be smarter? Because potentially both are fraught with peril, right? Because, okay, if you run it back with a worse team, then he could look around and go, oh God, yeah, and now like maybe we're asset strapped. Maybe we don't have a way to really get significantly better in an ever increasingly good Western Conference. Maybe the smarter play long-term to keep him happy is to take a step back for a year or two and go, look, we're probably not going to beat OKC next year, but in 2 or 3 years, if we move on from Rudy and we figure out how to get off of Julius or Nas or whatever, all of that makes sense to me from an academic standpoint. But also Ant just went to the Western Conference Finals twice, and now you're going to tell him, hey man, it's probably not going to happen again this year, when he's like leveling up every year, at least in the regular season, and is like discussed as one of the 10 best players this year because he made second team All NBA. It's tough both ways.
It is 11:44 p.m. Eastern time right now. I would say before midnight Central. I'm going to go ahead and guess and say that Anthony Edwards will text Kevin Durant. What that conversation is going to be like, I won't know, but like that seems like a very common player trope, right? Where like the star wants to team up with the other stars. If he thinks that Durant is available and he obviously reveres Kevin Durant, you kind of assume he's going to reach out. And if Ant comes to you and says, hey, KD wants to be here, he'll force it on Phoenix's end, go get him. You kind of don't have a choice. You kind of have
Yeah,
to go do it.
you got to try that out.
It's pretty fraught too, because like, even if you do take a step back, which I think I'd probably endorse depending on what the Durant package is or what other win now ideas you could come up with. Even if you just take a step back, you might duck the peak of Oklahoma City, but following the peak of Oklahoma City is the peak of San Antonio. Yep. So there's not going to be an easy time here. They're not in the East. The best chance Minnesota might have to win a title with Ant would be to get to the East when the league expands, because Vegas and Seattle are going to be in the West. But we don't know when that's going to happen. So it's not something that you can really depend on. So there's not going to be an easy window in here. So at some point, they're going to have to take a substantial risk. I don't quite know what that looks like, but just keeping this team together, or, you know, changing it on the fringes, or like maybe just developing the young guys they have, that's good enough. That's not good enough, right? Like, they can't just sit here and say, oh, we think Dillingham has the potential to be a star. Oklahoma City has 5 Rob Dillingham.
Do you believe that? I obviously have not seen enough Dillingham minutes to make a judgment on that. I will say, in the few minutes that he's been out there, at least in the postseason and in the regular season when he'd catch some minutes, I just think, like, when I'm watching him, I'm like, what does he do that's like top level? Like, what skill set does he have that elevates that team? / he is so small.
It's going to take him a few years. And what I'd say the problem here is, if you told me Rob Dillingham at some point in his career averages 25 points a game, that's not a bet that I'm going to make. But like, I see enough raw potential that you could maybe convince me it's possible. I think the core problem is that they invested so much to get him, and that is just fundamentally not the kind of guard that you want next to Ant. You want a point guard next to Ant, and that's why Mike Conley looked so good.
I love that trade for the Spurs.
Yeah, like that trade, it was a fascinating trade at the time because it was so creative, right? Yeah. It was one of the, or Minnesota had no other way to get a high upside point guard prospect to replace Conley in the building. So they took a big swing. Time will tell if that pays off. But in the long run, I think those Minnesota picks, since I think we both think there's a chance that Ant is not there in 2030, is pretty enticing. And by the way, they used one of those Minnesota picks as the crown jewel of the De'Aaron Fox trade. And the irony of that is that Minnesota might have really liked to have De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, that could have been good for Minnesota. Man, so many decisions for Tim Connolly this offseason. The good news is he's incredibly smart, and he's one of the main guys that I would trust in the NBA to fix this thing. The bad news is it's going to be difficult to fix this thing. And as you mentioned, you got Oklahoma City in front of you and San Antonio coming up behind you, depending on what's going on with Wemby and the blood clot. Just real quick, what's your best bet, do you think, on, say, Julius Randle?
I think there was a lot of talk about, like, oh, he's figured it out in Minnesota, and like now he's really the all-star he thought he was in New York, blah blah blah. If I'm Minnesota, my dream is just that he opts out and I can like just wash my hands of the situation.
What would you do if you're him? Do you think? I mean,
if I were him, I would try to opt in and extend. Now, the way this works, and like nobody ever tampers in the NBA. Whoa.
Yeah.
He and his agent are going to be exploring this for the next month. And if he opts out, it's because he knows something's coming. There's not cap space out there this offseason. Yeah. It's Brooklyn and it's maybe Detroit. Yeah. And I don't know that either
maybe not
of them.
Detroit.
Now, we brought up Nickeil Alexander-Walker earlier. Detroit has to do some shenanigans to make their space, and they like have to let Malik Beasley go and let Schroeder grow.
And Schroeder.
If I were Detroit, I would really think about doing that for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think that would be really interesting for them.
Aaron brings up a good point real quick about the whole Tim Connolly and Tim Connolly we trust. He does have that opt-out, and there were these rumors about, would he exercise it given the new ownership and the situation there. Do you think he sticks around?
I think he does, because it was the new owners that really spearheaded the hiring. My thought, and I'm not reporting anything, I don't know this, was that was sort of a way to protect him in the case of Glenn Taylor keeping the team, not
Yeah.
as much as Laurie or A-Rod getting the team. Now, that being said, he might look at this situation and say, like, back-to-back Western Conference Finals, the arrow is kind of pointing down a little bit. Is this maybe an opportunity to get out of Dodge and then, like, in a year or two, maybe take a different job if that makes more sense? Or the Denver job is open. They don't pay well, but, like, if you
Yeah.
wanted to run that one back, it's on the table. The danger to him in opting out, though, is that if you were going to say, I want to, like, set myself up for the next job, he's behind Bob Myers in that pecking order. So I don't know that there's, like, a great
Is he?
situation out there.
Yeah, I guess he would be.
Honestly, like, we can have this conversation if you want. I kind
I,
of think I might rather have Tim Connolly than Bob Myers, but
well,
that's a
I
different
mean,
conversation. I think in the league, Bob Myers is seen as above him.
that's what's interesting about this, right? Because I think that, like, when we talk to basketball people or people who like to nerd out on this stuff like you and I think I'd rather have Tim Connolly too. But if you're talking about like ownership level where
Yeah.
they just go, oh, Bob Myers has a bunch of shiny rings, let's get that guy. I think you might be right about that. One more for you. So we talked about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We're in alignment there. Julius Randle, I think you're right. They would love if he opted out. I think that 30.9 number is like right at like where he could be. So it's going to be interesting. Keep an eye on that. Nas, do you think that's an auto opt out? He's got a player option for 15.
I don't know that it's an auto opt out. It might be an opt in and extend situation because just look, the quick math here 14.1 is the projected non tax mid level, 15.9 is where Nas's option is. So for Nas to opt out, he either has to think he's going somewhere with cap space, which would presumably be Brooklyn unless something changes, or he'd have to think, I not only have a sign and trade destination, but I have one that Minnesota will cooperate with, which there's no guarantee on that. So I don't know that it's a guaranteed opt out. I think his market value is probably closer to 20 and he'd want multiple years. He's a precarious guy to pay that much, though, because he's not a defensive, like starting caliber defensive center. You'd probably have to, like, if he was with Anthony Davis as a power forward, that would make a lot of sense. But on a normal team, he can't protect the rim at the level you need a starting center to. But he probably isn't mobile enough defensively to play power forward as a starter. So he's in that weird nether zone where he kind of wants to get paid as a starter. I don't know that he necessarily is a starter. Like, is there a team out there that makes sense for you? It's tough.
I mean, the Lakers would love him, but like, how do you make that happen for all the reasons that you just outlined? But yeah, I mean, like, if it's an opt out, it has to be a team with cap space, and you just routed off the reasons why. If it's not Brooklyn, who's it going to be? I don't think Detroit's not in the that whole like Detroit might have cap space thing. I think they're going to look at this thing and go, hey, we had a really good year. Let's just keep the guys that actually worked for us and Beasley and Schroeder and just like go forward again and see what happens. But yeah, I'm a big Nas guy. I like Nas. You're right about him not being like a starting level rim protector, but he is really active at both ends. So I want good things for Nas, whether or not good things mean staying in Minnesota or not. I think he's worth more than the 15 is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I think one of the problems this postseason has shown is that bigs who are defensively vulnerable, unless you're Jokic, it can get really ugly, right? Like, I think part of the logic of the Karl Anthony Towns trade was that they thought Naz Reid could give them 75% of the production at
Yeah.
like 40% of the cost. But even Karl Anthony Towns is having real problems on defense in this Eastern Conference Finals. And like, he's questionable for game 5 tomorrow. There's a part of me kind of wondering, like, could the Knicks maybe win that game without him because of defense and grit? Like, is that possible? I don't know. I think there's going to be a sentiment coming out of this postseason that paying the guys like that who are defensively vulnerable to big positions might not be super desirable. Like, the league isn't trending in that direction and say the way it was a few years ago, but I would expect he makes more than the 15.9 next year.
Yes, I would expect that too. That was pretty much my whole baseline there. All right, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Sam's got to go right. Oklahoma City is marching on to the NBA Finals. They've been fantastic this season. We'll see who they play in the finals, likely the Pacers. Bummer for Bing Bong, but I think that thing is over now. And now the Wolves, we'll see what they do in the offseason. As we mentioned, just critical decisions coming up for Tim Conley, if it's Tim Conley or whoever's running the ship there. We'll talk more about all of that in the future. But for now, for Sam Quinn from CBSSports.com, make sure to read all of his stuff on our website. I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.